Okay, I kind of want to do a follow-up on my video on the Battlecry line by Windlass. I did the video as just kind of a preview, and today I had the opportunity to actually drop by the storefront for Windlass in the Atlanta area, and I got a chance to handle every single one of these items. Now, what I'm going to say about these items should reflect the finalized production version, but what I will note here at the beginning, and will certainly note throughout this conversation, is that each and every one of these weapons that I got to see that they had on display were actually part of their original run, potentially even having some minor changes because they were kind of conceptual pieces. And what the person in the storefront told me is that all of these were actually the ones used in the videos by John Clements. So there is potential for there to be small, minor changes between what we have in the storefront, what I got to see, and what the actual finished production version is. So keep that in mind. But for the most part, they were pretty good reflections of what I think the production version will actually be and what you can actually get when you buy these items. The first thing I will say in general is that I'm actually very impressed. Coming from Windlass and at the price point that these are actually pretty good deals. So I'm actually going to do a second run through of all of these items and actually speak to some of the aspects of these swords that I feel are worth noting. One additional thing I will note before we get started is that all of the swords that have the kind of stone wash effect on them, that kind of blackening to it, those all look like appliques. They actually look very nice. They almost look like a dark marble finish to them. Very interesting looking up close, and I think they actually look very, very nice up close as well. So the finish on the blades were actually a lot better than I was expecting. The first time I actually got to handle was the Orleans Battle Axe. And it was kind of exactly what you expect. It was essentially a basic battle axe. If you're looking for something that has that kind of design to it, and you're looking for a good axe, I would suggest that this might actually fit the bill. And especially since this is one of the kind of less expensive options in this line by Windlass, it might be worth picking up. I really have no doubts about its functionality. I think it would serve perfectly as a battle axe. The soldier's buckler, it's a buckler. I don't really know that I have that much more to say about it. It looks perfectly functional. It's designed well. It's about the right size for most buckler use. And I will say that I think the price is a bit high. So what you're really spending the extra money on, getting this buckler versus any other, is the finish and the overall design aesthetic. So if you like the look of it and you're looking for a buckler, okay, it might be a good deal. The next one that I got to handle, and is certainly the one I have the most to say about, is the Acre Crusader Broadsword. So they have this listed at a weight of 3 pounds 6 ounces, and quite honestly, I don't know if I actually believe that. I actually would like to test weigh this myself, because it actually feels a whole lot lighter than even 3 pounds, much less 3 pounds 6 ounces. They did an extremely good job making this very well balanced and very comfortable, and if it does in fact weigh over 3 pounds, you really don't feel it as much as you would expect. Overall, this is actually a very long broadsword. So as an arming sword, it's got a very long blade. And I was actually so impressed with it. Now, this is the one that I'd been eyeing, actually, but there was a part of me that really wanted to actually hold it before I ever kind of thought about actually buying it. And after having a chance to handle it, I actually purchased it. Now, they are out of stock. Like, they basically sold out of all of these. And so it's not until May that they're going to get the next round in. So I pre-ordered it, essentially. I will get the next order. But overall, I was very impressed, and I totally was ready to pick that up. As soon as I had a chance to hold it and feel how good it felt in the hand, it was very impressive. The next thing I looked at was the Agincourt War Sword. And I will say, this is actually a surprisingly short sword. I didn't really think about it in watching the videos and even looking at the specs of the sword, but the blade length is only about 30 inches long. What's important to note is that means it has a shorter blade on this kind of bastard sword style than the arming sword has. And so it actually was a little bit off-putting, to be quite honest, seeing it in person. I was not nearly as impressed with this one as I really thought I might be. But it felt very good. It was very light, felt very nimble. And again, I'm actually impressed from a sword perspective. This actually seems pretty good. The Bosworth Longsword is actually probably one of the better constructed of all of the swords they have. It feels very nice. It is a very good longsword. For $250, this is a very good longsword. I was impressed by it from that kind of, what I would assume to be a very good functionality standpoint. Obviously, I didn't get to really dive deep into it, just kind of handling it in a storefront. But I would assume it actually handles very well from the little bit that I got to mess with it. The only thing that's really, again, to me, a drawback is the visuals. In messing with the hat and falchion, what I found is that it actually has a good bit of weight behind it. Not overbearingly so, but you can definitely tell that it's a falchion and that it's made for chopping. I really have no doubts that this is probably a pretty good buy for a falchion if it's the style you like. And so if it's what you're looking for, maybe it's a good option to pick up. The Malden Viking sword was actually really quite nice. Again, I was surprised by how light it was, especially compared to some of Windlass's other Viking offerings. Now, this is probably the most heavy of all the swords. It feels the most heavy. And that's maybe a little bit to be expected from a Viking-style sword, but overall, it was not bad. And finally, the Malden Sax. I gotta handle it. You know, it's a longish dagger. It's a sax, right? I don't really have that much to say about it. If you're looking for one and you like the design, it might be a good one. Now, one thing that I will say about all of these items, and especially the swords, is that they all very much suffer from Windlass's gap issue. That is, the gap between the hilt and the blade. Every single one of these has a rather significant gap, some more so than others. Specifically, the Viking sword and the falchion both had a larger gap because I think really of the blade size and the thickness of the blade. Overall, though, you know, I kind of expect that from Windlass, and it is a sub $300 price range, so I'm not expecting the world out of it. But overall, again, all of these felt actually very nice in the hand, very functional. Maybe actually some of the better offerings that Windlass has actually had. So in the end, it wasn't really all that surprising to me that John Clements was actually willing to endorse these products because they're actually really quite nice. For Windlass, they are exceptionally nice, in my opinion. Again, you really have to want the design aesthetic, but that's going to be a personal choice. Now, what I did not really get a chance to see was the scabbards that come with this. What I was told by the associate in the storefront is that all the swords have scabbards, and that, in general, all of these scabbards are fairly nice, and they come with this kind of weird frog system where you can either use your own integrated sword belt or you can just get this little clip-on thing that goes onto the belt. I don't really know what he was talking about because they didn't have them for me to see, so I can't really speak to the scabbards or anything else. But overall, I think if you're looking for a good package deal, you may not actually go wrong picking these up from Windlass. They seem to have had a pretty good run on their stock, and it looks like they're ramping up their production in order to provide more to consumers. And like I said, I went ahead and picked up the Broadsword because I was actually pretty impressed by it. So I'll probably do a formal review of that one pretty soon because I imagine most people are probably pretty interested in it. And I won't really speak any more to any of the other ones unless I get a hold of them for the purposes of a full review. So I hope this is helpful for anyone who is looking at these and wondering, you know, if they really are too good to be true. And to be quite honest, yeah, they're probably a little bit too good to be true, but they're still pretty darn good. And again, at the price point, I think that Windlass is actually stepping up their game. So good job, Windlass.